So I'm fixing to start assembling the motor. The first thing I'll start with is I need to reinstall. Actually, I need to put in these oil block-off caps right here. So we'll go ahead and get those installed. It looks like the stage 1, they need to be torqued to 89. And stage 2, go another 45 degrees on each of those. You can see them right there. So I'll take those out and go ahead and get these installed. I've got them and I'm ready to put them in. It doesn't say nothing about putting oil on here. There's already oil in there. I don't think it matters whether you put oil on it or not. So I'll go ahead and get these installed. You have to make sure that little groove right there is always lined up on the right side. I've got that rear thrust washer on. I put a little bit of oil on the inside so it holds it there, a little bit of assembly oil. Up. Let's go ahead and get that crank put on next. So we're ready to set the crank in. Go ahead and lift it back here. Make sure we don't knock that thrust washer out. There you go. Thrust washer looks good. We got that done. Got the crank installed. Let's move to the next part. Now I'm going to go ahead and install the caps. I've got the studs out, and if you'll remember, or if you've taken one apart, you'll know this piece holds that oil pickup. And you have to get the correct stud in the correct place, because one of these studs has that end on top that gets smaller, and that lets you screw this piece right back on top of it. So that thing has to be in the right place. And they send a torque sheet with a torque for their torque specs. So I'll go ahead and use this instead of Ford's, since these studs probably get torqued a little tighter. when you get those main caps tightened down and those side ones, you have to make sure the crankshaft torque to turn doesn't exceed 53 inch-pounds. So I'm going to go ahead and check that right now. Nope, it doesn't. If you go fast, of course, you can make it break. That, but just normal turning, everything seems right. Next, I'm ready to check the piston, the cylinder block, and piston ring clearances. So I'm going to go ahead and get the gaps checked on those rings. First thing I want to do is just get it started in there. Get it pushed down below a little bit. Then I'll grab a stock piston. I took the rings off of this one. And I'll make sure everything's straight. There you go. You can see it right there. And now I'll get my feeler gauge and check that gap over there. You're going to want to do this for each cylinder. Just check the ring gap on each one. Put it to where you want it. Normally with boost you want a little bigger gap than you do on an NA motor. So I'll get that checked and get it where I want it. Next, you're ready to install the piston rings. That mark that they talk about, the 0 mark on the ring, make sure it's always pointed upwards. And I'll show you that mark. You can see that little dot right there on that ring. That's what needs to be pointed up, and then the hook feature will point down towards the bottom of the piston. And you'll notice the second ring has got the hook feature, what they call. You may be able to see it. You can see it right there on the edge of the ring. That gets pointed down, and of course on the other side of this one also has that little dot that gets turned up. And it also has a certain, the ring gaps get turned to a certain position. I'll show you what that is. You got to install the upper compression ring, make sure it's pointed upwards. There's a position. Has each one numbered. In case you don't know, then there you can tell how each one gets turned. First set of rings on. You can see the way I'm holding it is as like it's showed right there, with the bore for the wrist pin head pointed this way. And over here I've got the top compression ring. You can see the dots turned up, and which number 5 would be the lower. And I have the compression ring turned up on it too. You can see it right. You see it, and it's got that groove on the bottom. And you got an oil ring. The top oil ring gap is right there. The lower oil ring gap is right there. And then the middle expander is right in line with that wrist pin. I've got 2 of the rods installed so far, and I just ran into a problem. The caps of these rods are quite a bit wider than the stock ones, and you can tell where my oil block off caps are. That bolt is actually hitting my rod. When it comes around, it catches, and I can't actually make a full rotation. So I'm going to have to take those bolts out and get some flat bolts that clear. You'll see what happens right here. I'll start turning it. Come around, soon it'll stop. Right there. There it just completely stops. So then you go back the other way and it hits on the other side of that bolt head. You'll hear it hit here in a second. Right there. And I checked for the markings on the rod, and I can actually see where it's hitting. So I'm going to have to go get those other bolts before I can keep going. Luckily I can still get to them without taking the crank out. So that's good. I'll probably have to take those rods back out though. Just to check and make sure though, I'm going to pull this bolt out, see if I can get it. There we go. Got it loose. Now I'll just reach down there and get it out. Now I'm going to check and see if it rotates without catching on anything. Yep. Rotates all the way around. I'll need to check that clearance for sure, but I'm going to have to change all of them. Here's the new screws that I got. They got a lot smaller of a head on them, so those should clear no problem. Another thing you have to do when you do put the main studs on is this piece that goes on here that holds the oil pickup tube on, you have to shorten it by 1/8 inch, and then you also have to drill about a 1/2 inch hole in there, about a 1/4 inch. You see it was like that, but the reason you do that is so it can go over those threads right there where they get bigger and sit down flat against that nut. You can tell where it'll slide right over it. Everything's timed on it. You see that mark right there, and the one on the bottom of the crank right here. It's all lined up. So next thing, I'm ready to go get the front timing chain cover on. everything's together besides the oil pan on the bottom, and the only reason I didn't put it on yet is because I need to weld these bungs into there for my oil drain lines to go into the side. But for now, this will be the end of this video, and the next one will probably be either installing this motor into the car and running it NA, or if the turbo kit gets here soon, I'll have a video of the install on that and putting it into the car.